Hello. Today I will be returning with another French cruiser, the one I have been probably testing the most, the Tier 8 one, the Charles Martel. The reason I've been testing it the most, of course, since it's T8, the competitive tier, so I'm quite interested in seeing how this one performs. And I've not been very impressed. Let's start off with the obvious, of course. 38,000 HP. I mean, you beat the New Orleans and you beat the Chapaev. They have 35.4 and 37k respectively, but everyone else has pretty much more HP than you. Atago and Kutuzov both have over 40k, Hipper has 45k, so nothing really special in the health department. It has 140mm spaced armor on the Citadel, but that's only really at the middle part of the Citadel. The Citadel on the ship extends quite high from the water. It's way above the waterline, almost halfway up the deck, and it extends all the way from the back turret to the front turret. And that 140mm spaced armor is only around the middle of the ship. Underneath the turrets, it's only 100mm armor, which is of course the same as, for example, Chapaev's armor. So not exactly tanky either. In fact, if you give broadside in this thing, you will get deleted quite easily by pretty much any battleship. Even cruisers can wreck you very hard. Torpedo protection, 16%. I mean, that's the same as Atagos, that's pretty good. Some of them have no torpedo protection, like Chapaev or Kutuzov. And the guns, I mean, very familiar scheme compared to the New Orleans. It's 3x3, 3 turrets with 3 guns, 203mm guns. 12-second reload, 15% fire chance, that's pretty okay. But, I mean, it doesn't really compare with the Chapa or the Kutuzov in terms of fire starting, because, well, those have more guns, faster reload. So, in terms of fire starting, it's not really going to compete with either. And in terms of HE Alpha, well, Atago and Mogami both pack a much harder punch when it comes to that. They're not bad, but they're not really anything special. The shell velocity is also not really much to brag about. The shells are quite slow, and I mean, it has 17.6 km range, which is very good. I think Chapa has like 17.3, Hipper has 17.5, so 17.6 is very good. But because of these issues with, well, slow shell velocity and the air drag seems somehow weird. I don't know, I feel like I haven't been as consistent in landing shells at long distances with these French ships. I've found that the 17.6 km range isn't really that realistic. The only time you can really use it is to just shoot battleships. I mean, that's not a bad use of it, but even they can be tricky to consistently land shells at, especially at the max range, because once again, well, you can look at the arcs, you can see the shells, how long it takes them. This is target 11 km away, and it's surprisingly tricky to consistently land shells. So the Kutuzov, Chapaev, even Hipper are obviously significantly better at this. And the AP seems weird. The AP that's a common theme with these French ships, is that when you shoot an AP volley at someone, you end up getting both shattered shells and overpens at the same time. And this is a very consistent issue. You get both shattered shells and overpens. It's like the shells aren't durable enough to punch through armor, but they also have enough velocity that when they do hit thin armor, they just go straight through it. I don't really understand. I feel like they've missed something up in the calculations, because the AP has been very underwhelming on most of these ships. I almost rarely use AP anymore on them, unless I'm point blank to someone's Citadel. So gunnery, not really too much to talk about. The torps, I mean, the same thing that pretty much all of these have. 2x3, meaning 3 torp tubes on both sides. Each torp does 15 km, 15k even, and 9 kilometers of range. It's decent, but I mean, it's nothing special once again. The AA, pretty underwhelming. You saw the values earlier in this, but it only has 34 DPS on the long range AA. That's obviously garbage, since the long range AA is the one that benefits the most from popping defensive AA. The mid-range values are okay. And I mean, ultimately, if you want to compare it, the AA is better than Atagos or Mogami's Antir, but it's nothing compared to Chapayev, Kutuzov, Hipper. These all have significantly better anti-air. So once again, kind of in the middle of the pack when it comes to this. Moving on, of course, to the so-called national flavor of these friendships, which is of course speed. And sadly it only does 32.5 knots without the speed boost. Now, for those that don't remember the values by heart, that's the only one you're really beating is the Hipper, because the Hipper does 32 knots, that's the slowest one. Every single other T8 cruiser is faster than you are. So without speed boost you are among the slowest, and then if you do pop the speed boost you can reach 35.1 knots, that's the 8% boost. You can actually see the anti-air here. I'll pop defensive AA, and even though you can't see it here, I'm actually focus firing these torpedo bombers, and you can see how bad the long range anti-air is. No planes are dying at all. It's only when they come close enough and start spending time in my mid-range AA that the planes finally start dropping from the sky. But even then, only because this carrier really had to go around like this, had to basically cycle around. I'm focus firing this squad as well. Only because he had to cycle around, I was able to kill these torp bombers in time. This ship can quite easily be struck by it. This is a tier 8, a Shokaku carrier, so if I hadn't had the land to cover me, and probably the backup of these DD shooting down planes as well, it's quite easy probably to strike the ship out. Anyway, moving on to the speed, of course. With the speed boost you reach 35.1 knots, and that means you're still slower than the Atago. So that seems to be a very common theme. They made the speed like the common theme or the national flavor for these friendships, but then they made the speed, the default speed on them, among the worst of all the cruisers, and then with the speed boost you can temporarily reach the same speeds as the faster cruisers, but you're not even able to claim the crown of the fastest cruiser for those 2 minutes. You're not even able to be the fastest cruiser for those 2 minutes. No, you can only get close. And that's only for the 2 minutes that speed boost is active. Then when it runs out, then you're once again stuck with being among the slowest. So this whole national flavor, not only is it probably the most useless consumable out of every single consumable you can imagine for a cruiser, it's also implemented in an awful way where the benefits are pretty much non-existent. I mean, you're the slowest, you pop the speed boost, yay, I can almost, but not quite catch up to the Tago, and then the speed boost runs out and you're slower than everyone else again. It's terrible. I dislike the whole implementation. You saw, by the way, when I shot that Kurfürst, first of all, shell shatters, of course, quite common with these friendships, it seems, but you saw also how surprisingly difficult it was to consistently land shells, and this is a big ship, a massive Kurfürst, probably the easiest guy to land shells on. But these arcs, as you can see, the shells are slow, long, arcy. There's the shell velocity being dropped in midair and so forth. Turning circle, 690 meters. That's pretty good. That's among the top. I mean, it's not quite as good as New Orleans, that has a turning circle of 660 meters, but it does beat out the majority of the pack. So that's pretty good. Rudder shift is 7.9 seconds with the module. That's pretty average. I mean, yeah, average would be pretty accurate. Once again, defensive AA is active, but at this long range, that long range anti-air, as I said, doesn't really do much. I'm trying to shoot down these torpedo planes. Of course, the range is 7.2 since I run AFT and the module, but you see, you're not really shooting down much at long range. And finally, of course, probably the most important value for any tier 8 cruiser, especially if you want to consider it in competitive in any way, is concealment. So with concealment, expert, the module, and camo, you can reach 10.5 kilometers of concealment. Now 10.5 isn't very good. Well, if we exclude the Edinburgh, since that one plays very differently from all the other cruisers, Atago is obviously the king with 9.1 km concealment, then we have Mogami that follows up at 9.3, then we have New Orleans at 9.5, even the Chapayev clocks in at 10.2. So the only one the Charles Martel is actually beating in concealment is the Kutuzov, which is, of course, has 11.1, I think, but that one can smoke itself up and has 19 kilometers of range in comparison, and it can Yeah, and it outspots the Hipper, but the Hipper has 7,000 HP more at 45,000 HP, and the Hipper has a turtleback armor scheme, which makes it, of course, much tankier. So, yeah, if you didn't hear it by the way I was comparing these values, it's pretty obvious I'm not very impressed. Oh, here we can actually see the armor thing I was speaking of. The very common thing when you shoot someone with AP in this ship, you saw overpens. Let's see what this will demonstrate. Shatter and overpen. And once again, the accuracy, not that impressive. I mean, my aim was maybe off, probably off a bit, but still I haven't really been able to get any of those, wow, I really nailed that guy type of volleys. And I usually get those in cruisers quite often, since I do like mainly enjoy cruisers. But the ship, like, once again, look, I'm popping my speed boost, and the Donskoy is sailing away from me. Because the Donskoy, I think, does what, 36 knots? No, actually it might even be faster, but I have my speed boost active, I'm sailing in a straight line, and I'm slowly, very slowly accelerating to 35 knots. And this is the national flavor of the French ships. The Donskoy is literally leaving me in the dust. He's turning to torp and shit, and I'm still struggling to catch up with him. And this is supposed to be the national flavor, this speed boost. I've been very underwhelmed with these ships. I've tried to look at them positively. I even had requests from certain Wargaming employees that I wouldn't be too harsh on them, but honestly, I don't see how anyone can look at any of these stats and not consider these completely unviable in comparison to any of the others. I mean, the game ends. This was my first win of the day on this ship. I did a bunch of DD damage and generally played the capture points. So of course I got a bunch of XP, topping the scoreboard against tier 10, yay! But this isn't something special to this tier 8 cruiser. I can do it in any tier 8 cruiser. And I've had some better damage games where I've like maybe done what, 130k damage or something, but nothing really too special damage wise. Damage you can see mostly HE, because I don't really trust the AP. That's become a bit of an issue. I don't trust the AP on this ship at all. So I mean, looking back, if someone asked me do you think the Martel in its current state is going to be used in competitive, my answer is no. In its current state, no one will ever take it instead of any other ship. I would rather have a Mogami on my team, because in competitive you smoke up your teammates quite often. A smoked up Mogami, not only can it torp the enemy smoke very effectively with the 10 km torps, but it also has a massive amount of damage. And I mean, of course, Chapayev, New Orleans, they bring radar, Atago brings incredible tankiness, Kutuzov brings smoke and massive damage, and great anti-air, of course. I mean, they all bring these things. Even the Hipper brings strong anti-air and long range and tankiness and torps, maybe German Hydra. Like, they all have something they bring to the table. Some of them less valuable than other things, which is why some things aren't even seen in competitive anymore, like the Hipper, for example. But still, even the Hipper brings something unique to the table. The Charles Martel is like a shitty Mogami. I mean, I don't know how else I can describe a ship. Or like a shitty New Orleans world where they remove the radar. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I feel like, didn't they look at the values at all before they released, or like even sent this out? It is, however, a work in progress, and I hope Wargaming will get plenty of feedback over how the current state of these ships is incredibly underwhelming, and hopefully these ships will not be released in their current state, because I don't really recommend this line in its current state to really anyone, including myself, even though I'll probably play them because I'm nuts like that. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you have a good one.